All right, so we're going to look at how we can solve some of these limits analytically when the function's not necessarily continuous at our point. The first one here, a, if we plug in -1 into this, -1 squared is going to be +1. -1 times 7 is -7. 6, you can see this is going to end up being 0. We can't have division by 0. So this function is not continuous at the point. So now we got to explore what are other ways. One way we've seen so far is to factor. And that's what we're going to do on this one. I want you to attempt this one by factoring and see what you get the limit to be. All right, let's see what you got. You should have factored that similar to what I have here. We can see these cancel, and that was the part giving us the division by 0. Now, if we plug in -1 into what's remaining, we don't have problems anymore. You should get -5/5. So the answer does end up being -1. All right, so factoring is one great way to do it. You can't always use this way. As you can see in this next example, there is nothing to factor. So we need some other ways of also solving these analytically. Here, if we put 0 in for h, we definitely have division by 0. So we can't do it that way. Can't factor. Another way we can look at doing these is simply to simplify. And in this case, I think if we simplify out what we got being squared here, we should be able to solve this one. So what we're going to do first is FOIL out that. Remember, if something is squared, that means we got x plus h times another x plus h. Continuing on that, let's multiply that out. Now let's multiply first outside, inside last. In doing that, that's going to give us x squared plus an xh plus another xh plus h squared. Now let's distribute through that 3. I'm also going to combine these two terms since they're the same. So that's going to give us 3x squared. We got 2xh times a 3 is going to end up being 6xh plus, distribute that 3h squared is 3x squared all over h. These now cancel because one's positive, one's negative. And now these terms remaining, notice both have a h here, so I'm going to factor out an h. So now we have 6x left over from this term, and we have a 3h squared left from that other term. Now these two h's cancel. Now we don't have that problem of division by 0 anymore, so we should be able to plug in 0 for h, and 0 squared 0 times 3 is 0. So it looks like the answer to this one comes out to be just that we get 6x. So that would be the answer to that one. All right, let's look at a couple other different ones. This next one, find the limit here. Well, this one we can't plug in 4 because we got division by 0. No factoring to do. Can't simplify anything. So another method we can use is on some of these you may have to do what's called multiply by the conjugate. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to multiply by the same thing that we had in the top, but switch the sign to plus. And whatever we do to the top, we also need to do to the bottom there. So now what we're going to have on our limit here is, in our numerator, if we multiply this out now, square root of x times square root of x is just x. We're going to, it's conjugate, so when I multiply these two and these two, they're going to cancel. And then when I multiply the last ones, I'm going to end up getting -2 times +2, which is -4. On the bottom, I'm not going to multiply that out. I'm just going to leave these two terms. And I think you'll see why in a second here if you remember doing these from prior years. Now we have some cancellation that's going to happen with this. So now our limit turns into just 1 over square root of x plus 2. Now we should be able to plug that in and solve for our answer. So if we substitute in, square root of 4 is 2, and so we get 1/4. So that's what that one's approaching. All right, last one, D. On this one kind of similar to B in that there's some simplifying, but it's a different type of simplifying. Here we want to, our goal is to try to get a common denominator. So we're going to go through and find out what's our common denominator. Let's start at the top there. The common denominator looks like 5x, so we're going to have to multiply this by 5 and the top by 5. On this side we need to multiply by x, so the top we need to multiply by x. So now our limit becomes 10 minus 2x all over common denominator of 5x over x minus 5. Still not helping us because we gotta, we'd still get division by 0 here, but now what we can do is multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. So let's multiply by 1 over x minus 5, and let's do that with the top. So now these cancel. So now our limit looks like this. We got 10 minus 2x times 1 is just that, all over 5x times x minus 5. Well, what can we simplify here? Well, it's a little harder to see, but the top of this does factor. What can we factor out of that top? It looks like we can factor out a 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2. And now we're close. These two parentheses on top and bottom don't quite cancel out because they're in different order, and we got to have the same order when we cancel. But what we can do, instead of factoring out a 2, let's factor out a negative 2. That makes this negative and this positive. And if we just switch those two things around, then you can see that, in fact, these do end up being the same now. And so now they will cancel. And so now if we plug in 5, we get our answer here of negative 2 over 25. So simplifying, conjugate, factoring are all ways of analytically solving these.